Hello, this is Brian Otten of Apologetics315. Today I am speaking with Phil Fernandes. He is president and founder of the Institute of Biblical Defense and Trinity Bible Fellowship in Bremerton, Washington. He is author of a number of books, including The God Who Sits Enthroned, No Other Gods, and most recently, The Atheist Delusion. His formal debates with atheists include Dan Barker, Eddie Tabash, and Michael Martin. The purpose of our interview today is to learn a bit more about Dr. Fernandes, his ministry, and gain insights from his experience in defense of the Christian faith. So thanks for speaking with me today, Phil.
Oh, no problem at all. It's an honor.
Now, for those who aren't familiar with who you are, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got interested in defending the faith?
Yeah, I'm located right now in the Seattle-Tacoma area of Washington State, and I was born and raised in New Jersey. Joined the Marine Corps a few months before my 21st birthday. It was back in 1980. And I was raised in a Roman Catholic home, but I never really believed. When I came into the Marine Corps, I was kind of taken out of my comfort zone. I started looking for meaning in life, and I came to Christ, came to Jesus' salvation. And once I started studying the Bible, I found that a lot of the things that I had been taught in Roman Catholicism, I didn't think they were true. So I took on somewhat of a skeptical attitude whenever somebody would say something, and I felt that I should test it with the Scriptures. And so that just kind of real naturally led into an apologetics type ministry. I can remember listening to the late Dr. Walter Martin, the original Bible Answer Man, on a regular basis, Monday through Friday on his radio show, and he would just answer Bible questions. And so I had a lot of Marine buddies who had questions, objections to Christianity, and if I didn't know the answer, I would do some research and try to find the answer for them. So real early in my walk, I was trying to not just find out what to believe, but why to believe and how to defend those beliefs. And so that just kind of naturally led me into apologetics. I planted a church in 1988, which is a church I still pastor, Trinity Bible Fellowship in Bremerton, Washington. And then I would preach apologetic messages, and they were kind of way over everybody's head. So I realized I needed to meet my people where they were at. And so by 1990, then I established the Institute of Biblical Defense, which would deal with the more in-depth, rational defense of the Christian faith. And I believe it was actually 1987 was my first debate. And that just kind of coincidentally happened. I think God's providence was behind it, but there was another gentleman who was teaching Bible study with a few of my friends, and they were complaining to me that he was teaching a form of inclusivism, that people were only saved by Jesus, but they didn't have to consciously trust in Jesus to be saved. And I figured, well, that's not biblical. You have to trust in Jesus, consciously trust in Jesus in order to be saved. So we ended up debating each other, and then I also began to take courses through Liberty University, and I would travel there a few weeks out of each year and got to become friends with one of my professors, Gary Habermas, probably the world's leading resurrection scholar alive today. And so I just naturally kind of stumbled into the debates, and things just took off little by little there. And I don't promote my own debates. I just kind of, I'll get an email or a phone call asking me if I want to accept a debate, and so the Lord really was good in just kind of creating those opportunities for me.
Now, were there any particular influences in defending the faith for you, say books or apologists?
Yeah, there were several. I mentioned Walter Martin, the Bible Answer Man, and of course he was the author of Kingdom of the Cults, and so I spent a substantial amount of time dialoguing with people who were, Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. Historical apologetics, I think John Warwick Montgomery, the Lutheran scholar, and then Josh McDowell is evidence that demands a verdict. But eventually, through my studies at Liberty University, I sat under the teachings of Gary Habermas and his work on the resurrection, and also began to study Norman Geisler's work, and eventually I got to take a few courses through him at Southern Evangelical Seminary when he was with them, and then William Lane Craig and J.P. Moreland as well. As of late, I really like Paul. I'm not even sure how to pronounce his name. Paul Copan. Mm-hmm. he's really updating. He's basically updating a lot of the traditional apologetic argumentation. He's updating it to respond to a lot of the attacks from the new atheists and things of that sort. So I really like Copan's work, however you pronounce his name. But so he's got some really good stuff as well. Well, those are probably the main guys. But as time goes on and you increase the level of your studies, there's literally hundreds of apologists that I read, but then you got to read the other side as well. So you get hundreds, if not thousands, of works there. So so sometimes it's a good idea not to spread yourself too thin and just pick one or two areas where you can contribute to the present state of Christian apologetics, and that way you wouldn't have to read as much as some apologists do. Yeah.
Now, would you say that there would be some particular essential areas that you would recommend people to focus on in their studies?
I really, I'll be honest with you, I really wouldn't, unless if somebody wants to be a general apologist, then you're going to need to build a strong case for the existence of a personal God, and you're going to need to build a strong case for the resurrection. So I would say if you just want to be a general apologist, you're going to have to really focus on those two. Nowadays, you have to provide evidence for absolute truth and man's ability to know it, and so things of that sort come into play. But really, I think that the easy thing to do is to say, I want to be just like William Lane Craig, or I want to be just like J.P. Moreland, and then you just start doing what they do, only you don't do it as well as they do it. And so that's kind of the easy way out. And what I recommend, Douglas Guyvett from Talbot is a really good example. Here is a guy, he was surrounded by his buddies who were just, Craig and Moreland, who were just tearing it up. And what he did in his early years was just to focus on refuting John Hick's pluralism. And so he became, and still is, the go-to guy among evangelical apologists. If you want to refute Hick, you got to go to Guyvett. He's the man there. Now, he will talk and dialogue and debate outside of that, but what he did was he saw, look, here's one objection to Christianity that isn't really being addressed. Nobody's, focusing the bulk of their time on it, and so I think he really filled the void there. So I would, with all these new twists on old arguments that are coming out, these new attacks on Christianity, I would encourage young apologists to get a basic understanding, to be a good general apologist, but then to try to specialize in one or two different areas where nobody else is doing work in that area. I mean, I can remember Francis Beckwith writing a book refuting the Baha'i faith. Up to that point, you couldn't get more than a chapter from an evangelical Christian, even a small chapter at that, on the Baha'i faith. So if you could find a need, and there's plenty of needs out there, and just focus on that, I think that would be the biggest contribution to apologetics.
Now, Phil, you're also a pastor at a local church there in Bremerton, as you've mentioned. Now, how do you recommend that local churches and pastors defend the faith better?
Yeah, and it's all going to depend on the size of the church. I mean, I think pastors should, when they should preach apologetically. Maybe not all the time, but just be aware. Just think to themselves, okay, maybe there's somebody in my church who isn't a believer, and how can I tell them not just what the Bible says, but why it's true? But then also say, and even the people in my church that are believers, they're surrounded by non-believers at work and their neighbors. And so how can I provide evidence, extra biblical evidence, for the things that I'm preaching? And if they just keep that in mind and do that periodically, I think that will help a lot. If it's a larger church, you could even, I would recommend people start hiring a pastor of apologetics, where somebody is just, that's the sole purpose, is to teach college level courses, really break them down, but on the adult level, and to train people how to defend the faith. And it amazes me how many, I'm obviously not going to mention any names, but it amazes me how many times I find out that some of my favorite authors, it amazes me how many apologists there are out there that are authoring books that are out of work right now, that the economy's kind of tough, and ministries are shutting their doors, and some of them have so many books in print that they'll never get hired by a secular school to teach philosophy. And if there's not enough openings in teaching Christian apologetics, so basically what I'm getting, I'd love to see the larger churches start taking on apologists in their staffs as a full-time position. But even with a smaller church, if you can't do that, I would try either as the pastor or delegate it to somebody who has some interest in apologetics and have some sort of Sunday school classes or weekly studies on apologetic issues. And I have a friend, Don Davison, up here. He goes to a Nazarene church, and he teaches Sunday evening adult studies on apologetics. So he'll take 3 or 4 months and refute the health and wealth heresy. He'll take a few months and do creation versus evolution or historical apologetics, and so it can be done even in the smaller churches. Although I really would like to see the larger churches hire full-time, pastor of apologetics type people.
Your studies focused on theology and philosophy. What role do you think that philosophy plays in defending the faith?
Well, I think not only every apologist, but I think it would be nice if every Christian had a college-level course in philosophy, or at least read a introductory philosophy textbook like Norman Geisler and Paul Feinberg's. Their introduction to philosophy, a Christian perspective, is a good place to start. But with philosophy, just some of the things you can gain from that, for instance, are logic, the laws of right thinking. Obviously, you're not going to be able to build a really good argument for Christianity if you can't even build a really good argument. And so it's nice to understand, well, what type of arguments, what way can I construct a really solid argument to defend the Christian faith? And then the field that I specialize in philosophy, the branch of philosophy, is called philosophy of religion, and that deals with the big questions when it comes to, does God exist? Is there evidence for God's existence? Can you use arguments for God's existence? How do finite, limited people talk about an unlimited God? Is it possible to talk about God? What about the problem of evil and miracles and the different worldviews? So I would say that philosophy, a good background in philosophy, is essential to be a good apologist. Not everybody can afford a college course. Not everybody could go away to a college or take one at home, but you could certainly pick up good philosophy textbooks written by Christians and study these issues on your own. But I think philosophy is very essential. A good background in philosophy is essential to being a good apologist.
Now, one of your courses that I enjoyed was one that surveyed apologetic methodologies. What sort of methodology would you employ in defending the faith?
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because I'm rather eclectic. I like to borrow. I see good in just about all the different approaches at the same time. What I don't like is when, like, for instance, Van Tillian presuppositionalism, when they argue, well, this is my argument, the transcendental argument, and it's the only argument you can use. And so I would disagree with that. But I do like. I think the presuppositionalists have shown us that you don't have to argue from something to God. You can argue from God to something. So you could say that, well, just the fact that we're reasoning presupposes the existence of a rational God who created us in his image. Just the fact that we make moral choices presupposes the existence of a moral God who created us in his image. So I like that, but I think you can also argue from morality to God and from reason to God. So what I did was I just thought, here William Lane Craig is so brilliant. He's out there basically using deductive arguments to argue for God's existence. And he's pretty much proving God's existence beyond all reasonable doubt when everything's said and done. And I thought, that raises the bar too high for someone like me. And so I figured, well, let me take it out of the criminal courts and just bring it into the civil courts, where it's just the preponderance of the evidence. So in other words, if my opponent raises 3 or 4% doubt in the minds of the hearers, I still win the debate. I'm just trying to prove that theism is more reasonable than atheism, and just go one-on-one with the worldview of whoever it is I'm debating. So what I do is I use a cumulative case. I handle either God's existence or the resurrection as my hypothesis, and then I argue that when we look at several aspects of human experience when I'm dealing with God's existence, or several core historical data when I'm dealing with the resurrection, that the best explanation would be the existence of God, or in the case of the resurrection, that Jesus did bodily rise from the dead. So I try to use more of a humble, cumulative case and just argue for the preponderance of the evidence. And I think that's the way most humans think. We don't demand logical necessity before we eat a bowl of soup prepared for us by our wife. We say, no, this is reasonable. She loves me. She's given me lots of evidence that she loves me, so she's not trying to poison me. And then we proceed with eating the soup. So I use more of a cumulative case where I use lots of different things to argue that with each of these aspects, it's more reasonable that God exists than that he doesn't exist, or it's more reasonable that Jesus rose from the dead than that he did not rise from the dead. And so that's kind of the way I approach it. So more of a cumulative case apologist. A really good book there by philosopher David Clark on dialogical apologetics, where you can use cumulative case apologetics, and then you make your whole methodology, you make it person-centered. So, you don't prove the existence of a personal God to a Muslim who already believes it. You want to get to historical evidences with them, since they deny Jesus' death and resurrection and his deity. But I think that Clark's got a lot to offer there. But yeah, I'm a cumulative case apologist is what I would classify myself as, with a lot of respect for classical apologetics and the presuppositionalist as well.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned adapting your approach depending on the person, being person-centered. Speaking evangelistically, if you're just talking to someone on the street, where would you say the place to start would be for you, starting with the gospel and then bringing in defending the faith if there's objections, or what would be your approach?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because that's what it all comes down to is leading people to Christ. And I would say too, like Norman Geisler and Frank Turek, they're I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. That gives you a real good example of how you could start by arguing for the existence of truth, and then arguing for the existence of God, and then arguing for reliability of the New Testament, and then for Jesus' resurrection and deity, and then the inspiration of the Bible. But even those guys, they would not say, now this is what you got to use on everybody. They'd be the first. I know both guys personally. They'd be the first guys to admit that here is a systematic approach. Here is one long 12-step argument for the truth of Christianity. At the same time, if you bump into somebody and you find out he already believes the first 4 or 5 points, then pick it up there. And so basically what I do is I just keep the gospel message. I just keep it simple. God purposely made it simple. And I just share the good news of salvation through Jesus with others. And then I allow them to raise the intellectual bar by their objections. And as they raise objections, I try to respond to those objections and just take it from there. Because otherwise what we're going to do is we're just going to talk over people's heads, or we're going to give people objections that they never even thought of in the first place. And so I just keep the gospel message simple, and then if they raise objections, I try to respond to it. And so it's kind of like writing a textbook on apologetics is a lot different than actually doing apologetics with your neighbor. With your neighbor, you got to find out where they are. So when we share our faith with others, there should be as much listening, at least as much listening. We should listen as much as we talk to find out who it is we're actually sharing our faith with. And if at all possible, if we can build relationships with these people, I think that if your neighbor knows that you love them, and you bought coffee for them, you've had them over for dinner, and you've known them for 5 or 6 years, they've always been there for you when things are down. You don't have to accept the messenger to accept the message. But it's a lot easier to accept the message when you know you're loved by the messenger. So I would say building relationships, allowing the people to raise the objections, but I think you need to be not only a good talker, but a good listener as well to be a good apologist.
Well, you're an apologist and you're a pastor. In dealing with people, what do you think is the primary source of people's objections? I mean, surely there are intellectual obstacles that people have, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are on other sources of like obstacles other than intellectual, and how you would deal with someone who's just mad at God, say.
Yeah, and there are. I think there's a lot of atheists where it really is kind of an intellectual thing, but that's more because the people they respected, whether it was their parents or whatever, were atheists, and they respected them, and they've just been programmed to think along those lines. But Paul Vitz has shown the first generation militant atheists, the ones who just can't stand God and devote their lives to trying to tear him down, the Sigmund Freuds, the Friedrich Nietzsche's, without fail, the ones that he examined, and looked into their lives and stuff, he found that each and every one of them had either an absentee father or a hate relationship with their father. He actually turned Freudian psychology on its head and showed that Christians, you can't put Christians in one stereotypical group. You can't put them in one psychological group and say, well, this guy had a bad relationship with his father, he'll probably become a Christian, or this guy had a good relationship with his father, he probably won't, or whatever. You get Christians from all different backgrounds. But with those first-generation militant atheists, it seems that there's a problem with their father. Now, let me say this. You're more likely, a guy who has problems with his dad is more likely to become a Christian than he is to become an atheist. But it's just that such a high percentage of these militant first-generation atheists have had that problem in the relationship with their father, that Paul Vitz says that they basically have, in Freudian language, they have a desire to kill the father image. And so they have a problem with authority, and the first authority you're going to meet is your father, and if something's wrong there, then you're more likely than others, it's not preordained, but you're more likely than others to deny the ultimate authority, God the Father himself. And but what I find with most people, whether they're atheists, Christians, Buddhists, whatever they may be, with most people, I think Blaise Pascal is right, that reason is important, but it's somewhere down the list. And our will, our emotions, our intuition, our experiences, there's a lot of other factors that come into play that may be more important in our arriving at our conclusions than even reason. So a lot of times when we do apologetics, we're just basically trying to remove the intellectual smoke screen so that we can get at the heart of what the real problem is. But we often hear people, well, I was hurt by Christian leaders when I was a kid or whatever, and so it might be that the problems they have are not with Jesus, but with something else. And sometimes identifying that can help us to witness to others. But you're exactly right. There's more than reason involved. Pascal, his main disagreement with René Descartes, Descartes believed that man was a rational being, period. And Descartes argued that basically man was a rational being, comma. Like there's a lot more to it being a human than just reason alone. In fact, normally we come to our decisions and our beliefs by something other than reason, and then we bring in reason through the back door and try to build a case to defend what we already believed through non-rational means. So I think if we just keep that in the back of our minds, that may help us trying to understand why people believe what they believe.
It seems to me that you can't pigeonhole people and say, oh, it's strictly an intellectual problem or issue or obstacle, and you can't pigeonhole people and say, oh, well, you're just a disbeliever because you had a problem with your dad.
Yeah.
But it would seem to me that from the pastoral perspective, our concern can be for an individual and all of the different things that make that person who they are and believe what they believe, and then with that sort of idea where we're looking at it from every angle and not just one, that we can adapt our approach properly.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And there's just so much that goes into a human being. Human beings are so much more complex than we try. We try to simplify everything, but human beings are complex, beings. We have, their ideas, their experiences, their any number of things. But it's like for instance, sometimes you'll find people who deny absolute morality because they're atheists. But then there's other people who just want to do their own thing, so they're moral relativists and they just want to do whatever they please. They're hedonists, and then because of that, then they don't want God to exist. So sometimes people who reject absolute morality realize, well, then I better reject God too. Others reject God, and then they think, well, because I reject God, I better reject morality as well. So it can work both ways. It can move in both directions. And then that's why I say it's so important to build relationships with people so that we could really try to get to know them better and try to figure out where exactly they're coming from.
You've debated a few high-profile atheists. Can you tell me a bit about your online debate with atheist philosopher Michael Martin?
Yeah, I was contacted by Jeffrey J. Lauder, another atheist that I debated. He was the founder of Internet Infidels, which at the time, I don't know if it still is, but it was the world's largest atheist website. And he asked me if I would debate Professor Michael Martin from Boston University over the Internet. And so I accepted. So in 1997, it was known as Theism versus Atheism, the Internet debate. And basically I had to just post it lasted several months. I had to post a 20-page opening statement, and then he had a few weeks to read it and to respond, and then I had to do a 15-page paper, and then he responded. It went back and forth. We got permission from him to publish it as a book. It was hard to, we couldn't go to any major publishing house because he has this rule where he doesn't allow any Christians to make profit off of his work. And so he agreed to allow us to publish it at our own expense and sell it at cost or under cost. And so we called it Theism versus Atheism, the Internet debate. It was just a small run of 1,000 copies. They sold out probably just in a few months, but you can still, on Amazon.com, you could still get a few used copies of it. And so you could check out the debate. I would say this, too. If you do a written debate, it's not like a spoken debate. So whereas in a public debate, you might speak for 20 minutes and your opponent goes 20 minutes, and then you go 15, then they go 15, you go 10, they go 10, whatever. That's pretty fair. But what I found out from another atheist, Theodore Drange, he told me, he said, boy, you did pretty good with Michael Martin considering the format. And because I felt like I was constantly trying to refute 15 pages of stuff with 10 pages of stuff, and that's what happens. So basically, if anybody's listening out there and you're going to take a written debate over the Internet, you should probably just go 3 20-page rounds, and both participants should present each round simultaneously, so that when you do your first statement, the other guy's presenting his at the same time, so that nobody has a clear advantage in that type of thing. But a written debate, it's hard to put into words, but it's a lot. Dynamics are much different than in a spoken debate, and so I would say 3 rounds of 20 papers would probably be a lot more fair, and then have both debaters present their papers at the same time. And I think that would work better, because otherwise you're stuck with the situation. Whoever went first is trying to respond to 15 pages with only 10 pages, and then trying to respond to 10 pages with only 5 pages, and it gets pretty crazy in there. Because you'll say, well, I refuted everything the guy said, but I can't turn it in. It's 3 times as large as it should be, and now I've got to narrow it down. So in the written debates, that's the way I would do it: 3 20-page papers, and each round presented at the same time as the opponent. But that was real good. It's still posted at Internet Infidels and at our website, which is now instituteofbiblicaldefense.com. And so people could read it over the Internet, or they could try to order one of the used books. But I have no idea how many people have read that debate. But it's been quoted in scholarly journals and things of that sort. So that was a really big break for me, and it was pretty much all of God. That's one thing I can't help people do, is tell them how to market an apologetics ministry. I've never been real successful at that. However, somehow, some way, by the grace of God, my name got out there in the atheist community and with Campus Crusade for Christ. So every once in a while my phone rings and I get asked to take a public debate on a college campus, and if I can fit it in my schedule, I usually take it. So.
Now you've got a debate coming up with Doug Kruger. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, a pastor from a church in upstate New York, I think it's Oswego, New York, something like that, but it's at the State University of New York, the campus up there. Doug Kruger apparently is a really brilliant philosopher. He's working on his PhD in philosophy, I think at the University of Arkansas, and he's a professor at a community college. So we're going to be debating the resurrection. I would love someday. Came real close to debating Marcus Borg of the Jesus Seminar on the resurrection at Oregon State University, but he turned it down. So I just spoke unopposed a few years ago at Oregon State University. But there, the liberal scholarship gives you so much. If you read the works of Gary Habermas and his right-hand man, Mike Licona, liberal scholarship gives you so much, so many different core facts that they accept as established historical facts, that basically they give you all the premises you need to prove the resurrection. Yet many of the liberal scholars don't want to concede the resurrection, though they admit that all the alternative naturalistic explanations have failed. The present state of New Testament scholarship really favors the work of the Christian apologist, because it gives you all the premises you need to argue for Jesus of Nazareth's resurrection in history. Unfortunately, Doug Kruger is more of the Robert Price type, who doesn't really even believe that Jesus existed. They believe they have the freedom to just throw out large quantities of ancient historical data just because they believe, well, I think this guy was misinformed and got his information from this other guy, or I think this guy was misinformed, or I think this guy was lying and he just made it up. And they start throwing out not only large portions of the New Testament, but they start throwing out Tacitus, Suetonius, Pliny the Younger, and non-Christian writers, Josephus, who wrote about Jesus. And they just start throwing it out. So, well, the guy would have never said that, so Christians probably just pretended that he did. And so that makes it a little bit difficult. But if I could just show the audience how far outside of New Testament scholarship that type of reasoning is, and how if you use that type of historical method and apply it to anything else from the first century A.D., we would have no historical knowledge whatsoever of anything from the first century A.D. So basically, that's going to probably be the thrust of that debate. There is more of the popular internet type attacks on the resurrection and on the scriptures, rather than the more the scholarly dialogue you would have with New Testament scholars today, like that which occurred between N.T. Wright and Marcus Borg when they debated two different portraits of Jesus in the work. I think it was called The Meaning of Jesus. That'll be April 16th, State University of New York, and that's in, I think it's Oswego, New York. It's upstate New York.
And your most recent book is called The Atheist Delusion. And can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, it's the subtitle kind of says it all. It's a Christian response to Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins, kind of the new atheists. They tend to be more militant and less patient with Christianity than the old atheists like Bertrand Russell or Michael Martin. Their arguments aren't quite as rational and scientific, even coming from Richard Dawkins, a former Oxford guy himself. But the fact of the matter is, it's almost like they're arguing, look, we all thinkers know that Christianity and other religions are a bunch of fairy tales. So why don't we just admit it, and why don't we just acknowledge that teaching children about God is child abuse? And why don't we just admit that Christianity and traditional religions have led to all the wars that mankind has ever faced? And so why don't we do something about it and get rid of this ugly thing? The premise these guys are coming coming with is that, look, this stuff has been disproven hundreds of years ago. Now that we have Darwinian evolution, there's no reason to believe this stuff, that God created the universe and that Jesus is God incarnate and the Savior of mankind. So why don't we just acknowledge it? And it's almost like they're losing patience. It's like, look, the generations are going on, and these traditional religionists are still around. If we want to have a good future, we need to get rid of this. And so they're pretty much in your face and all. And so I did the Atheist Delusion to respond to them. And on the cover of the book, we have I had the cover artist do Charles Darwin and put him in stained glass, because that's one of my arguments against the new atheist, is that they slam religion and they don't even realize how religious they are, and that you don't have to believe in God to be religious. I mean, there are many Buddhists who don't believe in God's existence, and no one would say, well, that's not a religious person. And so if you have a set of beliefs that affects your behavior, and you align yourself with other people, and you passionately try to spread those beliefs and refute those who disagree with you, I don't know how you could be more religious than that. And that's what the new atheists are. In fact, I would argue the new atheists are more religious than a lot of Christians are. So I do that. I try to show that it's a religion. And then I use my cumulative case for God to try to argue that it's more reasonable to believe in God than it is to be an atheist. I try to tackle Dawkins' argument that evolution disproves God, and I try to show that's not the case. And then I just move on there to other issues. They love condemning the God of the Old Testament as being a genocidal, as you know, because he ordered the killing of every man, woman, and child of the Canaanites and stuff. And so they like to slam him there, but that's a real serious case of what Cornelius Van Til, the presuppositional apologist, what Van Til would call borrowing capital from the Christian worldview. It's kind of like there's no money in the atheist bank account, so whenever they need some, they borrow it from the Christian bank account. And so here they are saying there's no God, and morality is something that just kind of evolved accidentally. At the same time, let's stand in moral judgment on the God of the Bible. So it's kind of like you throw the moral lawgiver out of the universe, and now you have no basis for moral laws, yet you want to use some of his moral laws to stand in judgment on him. So they've shot the foundation out from under their feet. So that's a little bit of the direction that I take with the Atheist Delusion.
One of the first resources that I found like a few years ago when I was searching online for audio in defense of Christianity was your vast treasure trove of hundreds of hours of apologetics lectures. Now, where did all those lectures come from?
Over the years, I've been asked to give lectures on apologetics and teach different courses at small Bible institutes in the Seattle-Tacoma area. We have very few Bible colleges or seminaries out here, and the ones that we have are very, very small. And as you probably know, the Pacific Northwest has been for years one of the most unchurched regions in the country. As time went on, I started thinking, well, if I'm going to lecture, why don't I do classes of 5 or 6 students? Why don't I just tape these classes and then just we'll have the cassettes for others? Well, as the years went on, people started doing streaming audio, and Firefighters for Christ contacted me and asked if they could have some of my stuff. So I gave them everything I had back then, which was about 700 lectures and debates and sermons. And then eventually we got on sermon audio, where we upload some of our stuff on there as well. And so it just, it was real interesting, too, because I felt kind of prideful recording my own stuff, and then I read Francis Schaeffer, and he felt prideful recording his own stuff. But what he found was, somebody would come with questions, and he'd only have one day to talk to him at L'Abri in Switzerland, and yet he kept saying, "Well, I wish you had been there for a discussion I had with some students last week or last year." And so basically he had to trust in the Lord and get past that I'm being prideful, I'm being arrogant by recording myself. And he thought to himself, I got to get past that because I've got to do what the right thing to do for God's kingdom is. And so I learned there that, hey, I need to record it, and if God wants to use it, God will use it. And if that doesn't happen, then fine. But the Lord's really blessed us so that we're probably way over 2 million different downloads of sermons or lectures I've given throughout the world in over 80 different countries. So, and the Institute of Biblical Defense, we don't even, we bring in far less than $1,000 a month. So there's very little money coming in, and it's not something that we market a lot. Yet God has chosen to use our stuff and to reach out to people all over the world. And one interesting email comes to mind of a gentleman. I believe he was from an African country, but he was a Christian, but he was teaching in Saudi Arabia. So he would, or working in Saudi Arabia. So after he'd get off from work, he would illegally listen to my lectures over the internet. And he sent me an email thanking me, telling me that I was the closest thing to a pastor that he had there in Saudi Arabia. Just one person like that makes it worthwhile, but I know that there's more than one person that's really receiving pretty much seminary level training in apologetics. We get a lot of downloads in China, and you know how the communist regime over there is not real fond of Christianity. So we've had servicemen in the Middle East thanking me because sometimes they'll gather around 5 or 6 Marines and listen to some of the stuff because they can't get to a service if they're if everything's getting too hot where they're at. So whatever the case, we just try to be faithful, and the Lord has blessed it. Now sometimes we get feedback because some of the stuff was recorded in the early 1990s, and the quality's not that great. But we do the best we can with the limited amount of funds that we have, and it's kind of like I tell people, if you want to make a lot of money, don't think that apologetics is the way to do it. So I tell people that I teach Bible and philosophy at a Christian high school, and I pastor a church to support my apologetics habit. Because you're going to have your Ravi Zachariases and your Hank Hanegraaffs, but those are the exceptions rather than the rule. Most of the world's leading apologists, God bless them, but they have a day job. The fact of the matter is these guys have day jobs, and very few of them could make their living just from giving lectures and stuff. And that's the state of the American church. If you want to make people feel good about themselves, they'll pay you $10,000 to come in and speak. But if you want to take somebody through complex arguments for God's existence, you'd be lucky if you get the gas money to go and speak on that. So all I would say there is that I would just encourage young wannabe apologists, just start local and start studying and defending the faith in your local area, and then you can go global just through the internet, and then just let God do with it what he wants. Be wise, take the opportunities that are out there. If you know technology better than I do, then use it for God's glory. But in the end, it's going to unless you got a good business background, it's pretty tough to make your living just doing apologetics. And I love being a pastor, and I love teaching Bible and philosophy at a Christian high school. In fact, someday I want to move up to the seminary level and teach on the seminary level. But Sean McDowell, Josh McDowell's son, he and I have become good friends. In fact, he endorsed the Atheist Delusion book, but he really discourages me from leaving the high school level because he said, "Brother, we're losing them before they get to college. We think we're losing them in college, but we never really had them." So he's arguing, we got plenty of really good apologists teaching on the seminary level, and we got plenty of good apologists teaching on the college level, but we have hardly anybody teaching on the high school level. So he teaches on the high school level, and I teach on the high school level. So there's an example. If somebody wanted to major in Bible or philosophy or apologetics, and then try to, you might have to major in something else on your 4-year degree level, like history or something, to get your teaching certificate. But, get your teaching credentials and then try to walk in and see if you can get a job teaching Bible at a Christian high school. That would be a really needed ministry there. But whatever the case, it's one of those deals where very rarely are people going to be knocking down your doors and throwing money at you to come in and talk about Christian apologetics, and that's kind of sad. It's a field where we need more and more men and women to step up to the plate and become apologists, but it's not the first field I would go to if I was looking to make a career out of it, unless you were intending on teaching, and then I'd figure out ahead of time, well, what kinds of degrees should I get to work for, the teaching positions that I'm looking for or whatever. But I do believe apologists make outstanding, most apologists, the most really good apologists make outstanding pastors so long as they have the people skills. They really, if it's an apologist who just likes being in the study and doesn't like talking to people, then they probably got no business being a pastor of a local church. But if they have the people skills and they love people and you're an apologist, I think you've got the equipment to be a really good pastor, whether it's a senior pastor, assistant pastor, or a pastor of apologetics of a church. Have that position.
Well, Dr. Fernandes, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine.
We've been speaking with Phil Fernandes of the Institute of Biblical Defense. Be sure to check out his extensive audio resources online, his books, as well as his other online resources at instituteofbiblicaldefense.com. Links to these resources can also be found on today's blog entry at Apologetics315. This is Brian Oughton of Apologetics315, and thanks for listening.